you for joining us for another segment of the Happy Relationships Guidebook, where we talk about empowering women to heal and thrive in their relationships. And I'm super excited and over the moon to have our next speaker, Dr. Joy Martina. She is a psychic psychologist and a channeler of crystalline consciousness, which specializes in high-level intuitive intelligence training. She's a best-selling author, the creator of the Crystalline Oracle Training, which is a training to develop mastery over our innate psychic abilities. She's a master hypnotist and a trainer of trainers. But that's not all she does. She and her husband have a very active YouTube channel, which is a wealth of information, and an active Facebook group called the Joy Tribe, which quite frankly is a joy to belong to. Her new book, How to Use Your Intuition to Change Your Life, gives everyone the education and insight that was formerly given only to masters. Dr. Joy believes that everyone can fundamentally alter their experience of life by developing their psychic skills. Her approach to coaching has been called unconventional because of her ability to combine a wide range of modalities and her skill of connecting to the unconscious part of the brain. On her website, she says her mission is to help others step into their full potential and start living their best lives. Now, don't we all want that? When I contacted her, she was jolly busy. She's moving out of the country, teaching. She's a mother, she's a wife, a business owner, coach, and mentor. So you can see why I'm excited that she was able to spend time with us. Frankly, Dr. Joy can speak on any topic related to relationships. But when I came across her YouTube channel and the video on empowering women to equalize with patriarchy, not only did it shake up my world, but I knew this was a conversation that I wanted to have in this summit and start having these conversations with women. I believe, like Dr. Joy, that women have the power to change the world through our relationships. But as women, we need to recognize and accept that power. I mean, I think we can all agree that the world needs some changing. From Dr. Joy's website, I love this quote. She takes the healing powers of Louise Hay, shakes it up with the steadfast confidence of Tony Robbins, adds a dash of the perpetual pursuit of fun from Mama Gina, and you get Dr. Joy Martina. But I'd also like to add a couple additions. She has the heart of Oprah and the calm of the Dalai Lama. So I'm super blessed and honored to have Dr. Joy with us today. Thank you.
What an intro, Leslie. Oh my goodness, I've got goosebumps all over. Thank you. I am so honored to be here because I totally agree with you. It's time we talk about these things in an open and constructive way so we can all heal.
Absolutely. I just feel, you know, in your video alluded to this too, that there's so much angst and uncertainty, and you know, some of our questions relate to how do I go out in the man's world and make it there and then come home and detach from that and be feminine again.
And I think so many of us are actually so caught up in past pain, in all this conditioning we've all received, right? Whether we're conscious of it or not, that we're not even actually really present in the now, because we're usually, ruminating over things that happened in the past, going over some pain and injustice that I think every single woman has experienced, right? And if we've got one foot in the past like that, it's not surprising that we can't really be there in our relationships, fully present, and turn up as that authentic self that we are, because we sometimes don't even know who that authentic self is. So I've noticed, you know, I've been coaching people for decades now, and I've had the privilege of working with literally thousands of people because I teach big workshops, right? So I think I have a good scope of what's going on in the different countries, even from China to Europe or the US. And one thing that I've noticed that is really like a red line in men and women is that we've so often lost that connection to ourselves, to what I call our highest power, and that's our intuition. And when we tune back into that intuition, we know what's right and wrong. And we also know that right now we're on this cusp of a new era we can already feel it coming. We're already seeing that so many of the male gurus, as I call them, are being toppled off their thrones. And we know change is imminent, right? It's all breaking up, but we have to find a new paradigm. And that new paradigm, we're not going to find out there anywhere, not in the past, not anywhere near us, but we're going to find it in ourselves. And that's what I think is the beauty of learning that power of our own intuition, because then we can find new solutions for a lot of the adversity that's going on right now.
Absolutely. That was a great point. Are there ways that you suggest that women get in touch with that intuition, that inner intuition? Because as women, we're taught to be nice. And so we put ourselves in positions where we intuitively know it's not safe or whatever, and yet we don't want to be labeled anything other than nice.
Absolutely. So I think the first thing we need to do is we need to kind of demystify intuition. That was also my main purpose of writing the book, How to Change Your Life, how to use your intuition to change your life, because I noticed that there are not only so many myths around intuition, but there's so much BS going on. And with BS, I actually mean belief systems. So depending on which country you grew up in, which social hierarchy, which place you had in society, what kind of family you came from, we'll all have different traumas, different programming in us that is actually preventing us from listening to that highest power. So the first thing we need to do is we need to understand our brains, because our brains are often the organs, I think, that we rely on most. But unfortunately, they're the ones that will mess us up most too. Because, I mean, just take your mind. I'd like to give an example of when we know, for instance, we've got a call, maybe we've got to give Aunt Maybe a call, right? We need to give Aunt May a call, but we know it's going to be so tedious and whatever, but we feel guilty, so we'll give her a call, and we get on the call, and then it's as usual, right? She'll complain and complain and complain, and we'll feel worse and worse and worse during the conversation. So then at the end, we'll just put the phone down, and then we'll say to ourselves, I knew I shouldn't have called her, right? But then if you just take this example, your mind told you to do both things, right? Your mind gave you the idea you're guilty if you don't call her, and the same mind will then tell you, I told you shouldn't have called her. And then we have all that conditioning going on about, things you read, especially in spiritual books. Listen to your heart and listen to your soul, listen to this, listen to that, right? But what do we listen to? And most of us, I think, when we are looking for advice, when we're maybe at crossroads in our life, we'll go out and seek advice from the people around us. So from our peers, from our parents, from our teachers, from other people, from books, from films. But how out of that enormous ream of advice will you know what's right for you? So usually we will only go on to repeating patterns that are totally unconscious by, thinking that is the only thing we know. So we'll keep doing it until it no longer works. And that officially is actually called insanity, right? So when we understand that our brains only have a very small part that we consciously think with, and a huge part that we unconsciously think with the entire time, because the unconscious never sleeps, right? We can then see that the unconscious is actually running this life that we think is so conscious with old programming. So the first step that I always suggest is to step out of the buzz. We have to learn how to calm our minds. We have to learn how to detach from all that busyness that is going on and take that time to connect to ourselves, to spend even 5 to 10 minutes every morning just breathing, not listening to music, just sitting on your own, taking conscious breaths. That's called meditating. And around meditating, we have, again, so many myths, right? So many of us think, I can't meditate. Well, usually we can't because we've never been taught. I know when I started out on this journey of coaching people and really being so passionate about helping others step into their potential, I noticed that I had never been taught how to meditate either. I didn't grow up in a deeply spiritual family. My parents are scientists, right? So anything with meditation was deemed as something woo-woo. It's maybe it's okay for an Indian guru, but not for a tough businesswoman, right? So I really had to debunk that myth for myself that I could meditate. And all that meditation actually is training the brain to calm down, to go from the busy, better state that we're usually in when we're talking, into alpha, then into theta, and in the theta brainwave zone, that's where the magic happens. That's where healing happens. There's so much research on this, right? But it's also that time in the theta brainwave zone that we can hear our intuition. Because you see, our intuition is always there. We're all intuitive, but it's a really quiet, subtle voice if we don't train ourselves to listen to it. So step one is always take time outs, step out of the buzz and do it religiously, right? They say everyone should meditate half an hour a day. Unless you're really busy, then you need to meditate 1 hour a day. And I'm the first one who will admit that I thought that was total nonsense. Because I mean, if I'm so busy, I've got to do all these things, how am I going to make time to meditate? Until I noticed, you know what happens when you meditate? You actually make time. It sounds crazy, but it's true. So my first tip is time yourself 10 minutes every day before you even leave the house, before you get out of bed. Honestly, I sit up in bed, put a few cushions around me. I'll set my timer for, now I do 20 minutes every morning before I do my breath practice, but I'm really passionate, right? But do it 10 minutes and then do it every single day. And I swear to God, life changes for the better just by doing that. Then the second thing that I think especially us women have to learn is learning to say no gracefully. So I don't know how it was for you, Leslie, but I was not trained to say no as a girl. I was trained more to people please. I found out that, you know, if you do things for other people, if you're nice to them, you'll get more of that appreciation, you'll get more admiration. And then by the time we're, I don't know, 30, 35, we're usually burnt out because we can no longer, because we never learned to keep boundaries and we never learned how to say that no in a graceful way. So sometimes, I mean, for me at least, it used to be the pattern that I would say, yes, yes, okay, 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 until it just sort of, I erupted in a burst of anger or rage. And then I'd say really hurtful things because I hadn't been able to say it earlier. So learning how to say no in a graceful way, I think is huge. And that's step 2. And I developed 5 steps, and I noticed, I didn't develop them, I put them into these 5 steps because I noticed if we take these 5 steps that I describe in the book, we are able to hear that subtle voice and we're able to train ourselves to follow our intuition. So can I just quickly run through 3, 4, and 5 so you have them?
Absolutely, yeah. Go on, it's great. Yeah, great information for the audience, so absolutely.
So step 3, after we've learned to say no in a graceful way, is another thing that really took me, I'd say about 12 years to really master. And that is to be able to forgive and release joyfully. So as I said, I used to get really, really angry. That would be I'd like hold it down like this pressure cooker until I could no longer. I would then burst into anger. And then I'd feel so bad about being angry. And I mean, nobody likes angry women, right? They all say, oh, you're a bitch, you're this, you're that, right? So then you suppress it even further until the body usually reacts and we get all kinds of stress diseases. So I then discovered that what I really needed to learn most was forgiving. I didn't know how. I mean, who teaches you how to forgive? It's like, go say you're sorry. Or yeah, then you'll have people who don't say they're sorry. So how do you forgive them, right? So I then noticed that actually forgiveness is something that you have to be willing to. That's step 1. You've got to realize that by holding on to grudges and anger, you're damaging yourself most. And that we'll read in most books about forgiveness. But then the next step is to realize that that part of forgiveness it's actually just a ritual. It's something that you need to do so that your brain knows, oh, we're done.
Right.
But then even when we've done that ritual process of whatever we choose to do, and I really encourage everyone to look into EFT, so emotional balance tapping, it's very helpful there. And once we've done that, we've got to be able to live it, right? We've got to be able to embody that forgiveness. And when we've done those 3 steps, it's much, much easier to see the lesson in what we learned. So I then really had to see that every single, usually they were guys, every single guy that had hurt me deeply in the past was actually a fabulous teacher. Because if they hadn't done that, I would not be where I am today. I wouldn't be this powerhouse that I am, because I would have stayed in that comfort zone, right? If I'd always had a guy who was super nice to me and, oh, well, whatever you say, dear, I wouldn't have had to stretch my wings the way I do. So that part of seeing forgiveness and release is something that's joyful. It's like a festival, actually. I mean, think of the cultures that celebrate grief. in a
Right.
way. It's like a festival of, or funerals, where they see that as a festival of that person's life. They're able to celebrate with them that they've moved on, they're now in a happier place. So that joyful element, I think, makes all the difference. So it's not this grueling process. And then step 4 is another thing that took me a while to learn, and that is the owning your own desires bit. I, for myself, would suppress desires, because the desires that I had usually had repercussions on, especially the people around me, that were uncomfortable for them usually.
Right.
So I then thought, okay, well, better not go there, right? As women, I feel we're especially conditioned to never upset the apple cart. So we won't even own the desires in ourselves that we have. We will push them down. We'll even judge ourselves for having those desires, rather than seeing our desires as something that's like rocket fuel. The moment you own your desire and you say, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I own that this is what I really, really want, the universe actually will open up and respond, because it's physics. It's resonance, right? If we put out a passionate desire that's coming from here, it's that burning desire, I want to really do this, and I know it's right for me because I'm tuned into my intuition, the universe will support you every single time, but we have to own it, right? And then the 5th step is what I call tap into the universe. When we've done those 4 steps, we're able to hear that subtle voice inside of us. We're able to receive that guidance. We get that clarity in life. And then we are able to be in that space of what I call magical manifestation. It's no longer a place where we're willing and forcing things, coming from our egos and trying to just push it through, but we're just placing the desire out, we're holding the space, and we have that confidence in ourselves that yes, we're worth it. And yes, we can do it. And no, we do not have to do it on our own. We will do it with the support of, I call it, the universe.
Right. Absolutely.
Those are 5 steps that I teach in the book, and I give everyone a huge online resource too. It's for free, because I've discovered these 5 steps. It's one thing to read them. It's one thing to understand them up here, but to be able to really embody them, to do them, takes a little bit of work. And that little bit of work is just a few minutes every day, maybe 5. Maybe 10. But when we do that, we train our brains. They're like elephants, right? Our brains. We train this elephant to be more aligned with our true heart's desires and where we really want to go in life.
Right. Absolutely. I love that. And yeah, you're right. It sounds easy. And we all know, particularly when you were talking about forgiveness, everybody says, well, forgiveness only hurts you. But how often do we really then take that to heart? And I just had a really quick story. So I lived outside of town on a ranch and was with my ex-partner, and we sold property to a guy who turned out to be a miserable neighbor. I mean, we ended up in court. It was a very contentious, not a good relationship. So the partner and I split up, and the ranch sold, and actually, I sort of felt like I had made amends with the other guy. At least we could nod and say hello and that kind of thing. But as it turns out, I moved into town, and maybe 3 years later, that guy, exact same guy, moved across the street. I was like, what are you telling me? What do I need to learn here? And he's sort of the same. He's not a great neighbor, and it has started to really eat at me and bug me. And I was like, wait a minute. I know this lesson. I've had this lesson before. I just need to pay attention. And so, I did some forgiveness work, and it was like, yep, there's my lesson. Because I'm hoping if I move again, I don't have to have him move in as a neighbor.
Yeah, well, they say forgiveness, you're done with forgiveness when you can wish upon the other person what you wish upon yourself.
Exactly.
And that's sometimes a long way to go. And I think, the step that we need between maybe the desperation or anger or frustration that we're feeling and this complete forgiveness is acceptance. So, trying to jump from here to there, that's huge. You can, if you trained it often enough and you reap the lesson, you'll see there's no longer any reason to hold on to it. And the other thing I'd like to share, because it fits so well with your story, is I think, we cast different people to play different roles in our lives. We will always have that person that scissors off, right? We will always have that one person that's able to push our buttons. And I think we get to choose to a certain extent who we place into that role. But we've got to realize that we need those kind of people because they actually help us grow.
Right, right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Looking back, you're right. I have sort of the same philosophy as like, if I hadn't had those experiences, I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't be the person I am today. But yeah, sometimes it's hard to step out of that when you're in that experience and realize that's what's happening.
Yeah, a great way to, I feel, to reap the lessons is to really write them out. So what I love doing is if I'm not able to in the moment see how this could possibly be good for me, right? I'll take a big piece of paper, and then on the top I will write, why is it so easy for me to see the blessing in this situation? Why is it so easy for me to see the blessing in this situation or in this person? When we ask questions like that, they're called empowering questions, we are triggering our brain to give us an answer. It has to come up with an answer because that's how our brain wires, right? So right. Writing. Sometimes they start out with very sort of silly short things like, oh, well, whatever. But if you keep writing, you will fill a page, if you keep going, of all the good things that are happening, even though the situation right in the moment seems really uncomfortable and unplanned and not what you want. So that's something that I could give as a tip that's very, very helpful to be able to get into that state of joy of saying, you know what? Why don't we just roll with this and see how this could create an even bigger blessing? Because it always does, doesn't it? Don't the biggest catastrophes in our lives, those moments when we're really shaken to our core, actually offer us the opportunity to break open a new potential inside of us. We discover strengths we didn't have. We usually also meet people, make connections that we wouldn't have made in that moment. So it's really about opening those, those blinders and being able to take that step back. That's why the stepping out of the buzz is so important, to be able to see the whole picture, because we can get tunnel vision, especially when we're angry, right, or frustrated, right?
Right. Yeah. Or when you watch the news or social media, it's very easy to get caught up in that drama.
Thank you for saying that, because when I teach workshops and we talk about anger or retreat, there will always be some women or men in the workshop, and mainly women, who will say, I'm not angry. I don't have any anger. It's just, I don't feel it. And I say, well, you actually most likely have the most anger, but you don't even know anymore what it feels like, because you see, emotions are so individually labeled. Emotions are just energy in motion in the body, but the stories we tell ourselves around the feelings that we feel are the ones that actually get us, in our minds, and usually screw us up. So somebody might feel an emotion and label it as frustration. The next person will label it as anger. The next one will label it as sadness or even rage, right? Because it's so individually dependent on the stories that we have, the experiences that we've made, what kind of environment we grew up in, if we are emotionally intelligent or not, if we have words for what we're feeling. So I think that's really important to realize, that we will never not have emotions. And we will never just have positive emotions, because emotions really are the spice in life. But watch out what stories you're telling yourself. And I think that conversation that we all have inside of our heads is often marked by self-judgment. Even, we tear ourselves down most. We block ourselves most, right? And when we are able to take a step out and just see it as what it is, it's just programming. It's just conditioning. If your brain has been trained one way, you can train it the other way. It's just like a muscle.
Right. Well, and I think that speaks to relationship stories that women are telling themselves about, if I'm strong, independent, assertive, whatever it is, then I'm not attractive to men.
Says who?
Right.
Okay. And then, is this really helping myself if I'm saying this to myself? I was sitting with some girlfriends of mine lately, and we're all in relationships. And there was this one really sweet friend of mine who sat down and said, girls, I've got to tell you, the other day I discovered, why am I telling myself I hate my husband so much? Why am I doing this? I've really got to stop doing this. And we all had a guilty giggle. Because isn't it true that whenever something goes wrong in life, we will blame the ones closest to us most? So when in a relationship, our partner's going to get that projection, whether they want it or not, whether we want it or not. But when we realize that it's actually an inner game that we need to figure out first to be able to change the outer game, the whole paradigm shifts. I think that's why I'm so passionate about what I do, is because we all are capable. We all are powerful. We all are divine beyond our imagination. But we've got to start believing it ourselves and not wait for the outside world to give us that diploma and say, now you are. There's a good girl.
Right? Isn't it? Yeah, that's so true. I love that, because, yeah, that's the epiphany I had was nobody is empowering us. We have the power. It's we need to step up and accept that responsibility and say, wait a second, let's begin to change the rules of the game.
And hold each other accountable, don't you feel?
Yes.
I feel especially in female relationships, we need to really celebrate sisterhood more. I think so often we're celebrating let's tear her down, bitch mode more, or it's a very superficial kind of intimacy sometimes that we'll have in our female relationships because we're scared of showing our vulnerability. We're scared of showing everything that we are, and we'll stay stuck in these stories where we connect actually through pain. And we're not keeping each other accountable to really rise. And I guess due to my nature of being a double Scorpio and I don't know, into psychology from an early age, I was always more the prodder, right? And I, although I thought I was so outspoken and real, noticed that I was filtering. I was buffering it out. I was not saying things to even my best girlfriends because I didn't want to hurt them. But is that being real? I don't think so. And I think there's so much to be learned in how we say things. So for me, learning neuro-linguistic programming, really diving into compassionate communication, being able to express myself in a way that would not be seen as so threatening and aggressive was a huge game changer. And I encourage everyone really check out compassionate communication, the ability to express yourself truthfully, authentically, and compassionately really changes the dialogue that we have in our relationships.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's great. Because I tend to be a prodder too. Yeah, for good or bad, but I'm like you, I find that so many times, and I try to like listen to my intuition. If I feel like it's something I need to say, then tactfully, maybe sometimes not even so tactfully, but saying that and saying it's because I love you that I'm saying that.
Yes. And a good thing to Tony Robbins teaches this, to say upfront, to say, my hallucination is. Sure. When you start out like that, you're not claiming to be the only one who's, owning the truth. You're not claiming to be right. I think so often, at least I notice in myself, needing to be right out of a lack of self-confidence really messed up a lot of the stuff. And getting, better at releasing that need to be right and wanting to find a solution was really very helpful to me. So yeah, I love that, what you say.
Great. Yeah. Like I'm sort of curious because I love this whole idea of the patriarchy and how that resonates in our brain, because we have those patterns of really not until not that long ago, like women had a very set pattern of how they were to behave and their roles, and men had a very set pattern of how they were to behave and their roles. And how going forward do we start addressing, I think, those that ancestral patterning that we have? Or it feels like it's a struggle, you know what I mean? Like we're going, what do I do? How do I even behave here?
Absolutely, we're going into completely uncharted territory. We've had thousands of years, depending on which researcher we believe, 5,000-6,000 years of patriarchy. We've been programmed this way, right? And now we're suddenly reinventing the way we do relationships. And we're seeing it in the gender roles. We're seeing, transsexuals, people changing gender. Gender is celebrated and discussed more than ever before. As you said before, and we had set roles. So we have all this conditioning going on that's usually totally unconscious. Then we'll get the conditioning of our parents. So we'll copy the relationship patterns that our parents have too. And now we're suddenly noticing none of this is working anymore. We're all not happy, male or female. We're all feeling insecure, and we're now being asked to create a new paradigm that will only be created for each one of us as we discover what is it that I need, what is it that I can do for myself to create, I say, peace within myself, so that I can see it around me too. And that, I think, is where we're all being shown the mirror. Right now, we've really got to look into the mirror and own who we are, and own that every single thing that we've created in our lives, whether we like it or not, was created by some conscious or unconscious choice that we made. So owning that responsibility takes out that whole blame game. I think so often we're caught in the blame game, which really is so destructive. I mean, I'm good at blaming. I mean, we all are, right? Well, bang your toe and you'll blame the cupboard for standing there, right? So the blaming is natural because that's how our brain functions. Our brain is looking for mistakes. Our brain is looking for threats. Our brain is conditioned through fear. So we have to use that little part of us, actually the bigger part of us, which is our consciousness, right? Our awareness, to notice these things. I think the step one is to notice and claim responsibility, and then ask ourselves, well, what do we want instead? I'm not going to be able to change the people around me. The only change I can create, the only control I have, is the control over myself. And that in itself, isn't that hard enough? So if only we were to return to here and say, okay, so what can I do here to let go of the past, to get into higher vibrations, to stop feeling so frustrated and stressed and angry, and be able to feel joy in life again. And joy is something very different than happiness. So it's so fun that I was christened Joy, and it took me so long to find my joy. And to know the difference between that happiness that is coming from usually outside sources of, oh, when I have this, then I'm going to be happy. When I have that, I'm going to be happy. And that innate joy that we all have inside of us when we're connected to us, to, I call it our intuition, our highest selves, to our real selves, whatever you want to call it. And when we do that, it's really more about holding that space of higher vibrations rather than all the doing and the busyness that we have. And I think that's how our million dreams, if we all hold on to that utopia of us feeling happy and healthy and safe and living an easeful life, it has to spread. It has to bring everybody up. It's like a rising tide lifts all boats. That's how we're going to create the change on this planet, to be good role models for our kids, for the generations to come. We've got to start walking our talk. And also to know that, training the brain isn't hard. No. Our brain is so beautifully trainable because it loves repetition. So a great way to learn how to meditate or to bring new information into the brain is sleep programming. I always sleep to particular meditations or healing music, to use nightly sleeping hours to actually retrain the brain and feed it with information that is useful to me. So I don't know whether you know, but I wrote a book called Sleep Your Fat Away, and created an entire program around this, what I call the missing link in weight loss, or the missing link in being healthy, is the brain. We haven't, in any of the diets that I see out there, and all the exercise regimes, a bunch of them, but nobody's addressing that. As long as I have conflict within myself between that conditioning, that programming that I've received and where I want to go, right? As long as I don't heal that conflict, I'm always going to feel like torn between two bits. I'm going to go around in circles. I'm going to have to rely on the weakest part of me, and that's willpower. So by using nightly sleep programming, you can really feed your brain with healthy information, with empowering messages, with empowering beliefs. And if you do that for 90 days, the brain has to change, but it just takes 90 days. So, if you choose a track now, choose your favorite meditation track, work on a topic that's important to you, whether it's self-love or forgiveness or health or whatever, right? And then stick to that for 90 days. Just Put it on a barely audible level, really, really, really quiet, because you see, the unconscious is always awake. It can hear, even if you play a track backwards 4 times as fast, the unconscious picks it up. So use that nightly sleep time to train your brain. And it's, I think, the most effortless way of learning.
Without a doubt. Yeah, absolutely. And I think my point was about the brain training too, that what I find is so many people, maybe particularly women, we get stuck in an emotional state. Like, women don't know what happiness is or what joy is. And so how do you find those feelings when you're stuck in perpetually looking at?
Can I show you a way?
Absolutely. Go right on.
So this is one of my favorite, I call them power tools. So the most important thing when we want to retrain our brain is not only that it takes 90 days to create a new habit or a new automatic thought pattern, but also that we can use something called a pattern interrupt to interrupt a habit or pattern that's running us now. The only thing it takes is, number one, awareness. We've got to notice we're doing it, right? And then we've got to do something to distract the brain and bring it back to where we want it to go. So a really, really effective way of doing this is called the switch. And you just need your hands, and you make a fist with one hand and then an open palm in the other one. And then you switch between your left and your right hand like this. And just breathe. So when you do this, you're activating a whole bunch of acupressure points in your palm of the hand and on the sides and the ridge of your hand here. Now, try and do it with me, Leslie. When we do this, then we say something. Let's say someone's really pissing us off, right? So someone said something that's super hurtful, really makes us cross, and we don't know what to do. Don't want to get angry, but we are, right? So now we say, I love and accept myself, even if I'm really mad right now and I feel really upset and whatever, right? I love and accept myself. And then you breathe. And then you say, and I love and accept myself when I now choose to feel joy, to feel peace, and to be happy with myself. And then you take another breath. What you've done with that funky little thing is you've not only activated all those acupressure points, which means you're sending energy to all parts of your body. You're also taking a conflict that I don't want to be angry, but I am. And you're bringing it back to, it doesn't matter. I still love myself, right? I love and accept myself, even if I'm angry, or if I'm not angry, if I'm happy, if I'm sad, whatever. I love and accept myself. And think about it. How often do we say that to ourselves? Usually not at all. The other thing you're doing is you're breaking the pattern. You're taking those few seconds to take that breath, bringing oxygen, life force in your body, and to flip the switch. To say, you know what, and what do I want now? I actually want to feel happy. So by doing the switch, every single time you feel stressed or triggered, you will retrain your brain. You can't not. So try it out. And also, I've been teaching this to children, to older people for whom this is a great exercise to sync the left and the right brain hemisphere. So you're doing a lot of things at the same time, and it's one of my favorite tools that I've been teaching for decades. So please try that.
I know, that's awesome. I'm going to add that to my routine now.
Do it.
Yeah. Well, I think our time is about running out. I think we could probably go on and on talking about, I know, like for all sorts of, but are there any last thoughts that you'd like to share with the audience?
Yes, I'd love to share a beautiful exercise that I found extremely healing for my relationships with men.
Okay.
And that is, number one, to realize that men are just as wounded as we are. They're even more lost than we are, I think. Might be a sweeping statement, but my research says yes to this. Feel free to reject it. They're just as wounded as we are, but we have one huge advantage. And that is that we as women are naturally more intuitive. We're more tuned into our intuition. If we train it, we can use that to really help our men heal too. And the one message that men really need to hear, just like us women, is that they are good men. What I didn't realize, especially when I was in my phase of being more the angry woman, angry at all men, right, was that men have been conditioned just like we have, but actually in an even more painful way. They were conditioned from day one that they have to be the strongest, the fastest, the most powerful, the most vital, the most rich, whatever, right? Because you see, in a patriarchy, there's a hierarchy. It's top dog and lower dogs. So as a top dog, you only know you're a top dog if you have lots of dogs underneath you that you can kick. So if you are born as a man and you have been told unconsciously that you have to be the best in everything, it prevents one crucial thing that I think a lot of us women are missing in our relationships, and that is intimacy. We cannot be intimate in a hierarchy. So go to your guy when you're in a good space, right? Take a few breaths and think of something that makes you really happy. Think of someone you really love, a beautiful bunch of flowers. Get into your heart. Take 3 breaths and then sit down with your guy. Take his hands. Might feel weird, right? But you're doing good here. Look him in the eyes and then say, so-and-so, let's say Michael. Michael, I want you to know that you are a good man. And then you let it sit. You zip it. You don't say anything else, however awkward it feels. And then just watch it land. When I did that with my husband, it was, wow. And it changed something in the dynamic between us that I feel is really led back to that moment where he, in his unconscious mind, when I was really sincere, right? I went to my heart first. When I was able to say that and he was able to hear it because he could feel that I was sincere about it, something in him healed. And when that happened, our relationship, a part of our relationship healed too. So I really recommend that to anybody who's in a relationship with a guy, to let them hear that message because they really need it.
Wow. Yeah, that is great advice. Yeah. I mean, I like felt that in my core, because so important. You're right. Men are wounded too. And it's not a conversation of just how do we change our relationships with ourselves, but then how do we help others heal as well? So again, thank you. I'm so blessed and honored that you were able to spend time with us today. And yes, well, thank you. Thank you for sharing so much.
Thank you.